Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, my friends, the anomalies are still growing larger, and getting the Omega-13 to the station was not enough alone.
Computer, on screen.
We need volunteers to go up and...
Joseph, there's a massive energy surge coming from the sun. We have no time to make a scientific decision. We need to know right now. Do we remote activate the Omega-13, or do you think we will survive the surge?
Activate it, now!
What the hell was that? Hello? Anyone around? Explosions? I better check it out. Oh, crap. Now what? I need to get to my office quick. Check on the security cameras. Computer, activate security system. Video feed 1. Feed 2. Switch to feed 3. Where is everybody? System off. Oh no. Oh shit. What am I doing out here? Maybe there's something in the tracking center. Hey Joseph, is that you? Yeah, it's me. What are we doing out here? I don't know. 1 second I was telling Krantz to activate the Omega-13, and the next second we were out here. I don't see anyone over there, do you? The place looks deserted. No, I don't. I wonder what might have happened and why we're out here. Well, let's go in and check it out. Krantz was in his office. Let's go look there. Krantz, what's going on? Joseph. Okay, so I'm not alone here. What happened? I don't know. I was just checking the surveillance feeds and the center looks deserted. I saw Jeb outside. He was checking on the tracking station before coming over here. He thought he saw Bill go inside. Hey guys, I found Bill. He's checking on the KSS from the tracking station. Then he'll come join us. So, what happened? We don't know yet. Let's gather everyone we can find in the lecture hall and go over what we know. I haven't had anybody's idea about it is going around. Alright, quiet down everybody, come on, quiet down everybody.
The Omega-13.
We know you all have a lot of questions, but we don't have a lot of facts right now. Here's what we do know. At 3:15, an energy surge was detected from the sun. The initial spike was noticed the moment the Omega-13 was docked to the KSS. It was growing stronger, so the decision was made to disconnect the Omega-13. Remote commands to disengage failed, however. Activation was still possible, so Joseph and I gave the order to activate. That's the last thing I remember before this. I want a report from all personnel. Tell me anything and everything you know or can find out about what happened. Well, I was in my office 1 second and falling out of the sky the next. Yeah, me too. I think that happened to all of us. The place looks deserted. Yeah, I didn't see anyone else around. Me either. I think this is everyone on the base. That's impossible. Well, I noticed trees to the north that were not there this morning, and I swear the mountains beyond them are 1,000 meters taller as well. Has anyone seen the stars? They just don't seem right to me. Bill, you checked the tracking center, right? What did you see? Nothing. Literally nothing. Either the scanners are malfunctioning, or we have nothing in orbit, not even a small satellite.
Because if it is, I don't think it's very
Is anybody else
know
around?
what is going on with this?
Quiet down.
Like fell out of the tell us.
Thank you. Let's be scientific about this. Break up in teams, go around the base, and see what you can find. Report back here in 2 hours. Okay everyone, here's what we know now. Activating the Omega-13 seems to have opened what we have been calling the gateway up until now. It seems to have been a temporal rift, either sending us back in time or into a wormhole to a parallel dimension, or some combination of both. In any case, we're alone. To make matters worse, it looks like the planet is uninhabited. There are no other Kerbals anywhere. The KSC was sucked through to the other side, and a handful of us came through with it, but almost everyone is gone otherwise, and everything beyond the borders of this base is essentially unknown wild land. When we were back home analyzing the data from the moon and Minmus, one of the things we discovered was the potential for a large anomaly on Duna. Joseph has a theory. I'll let him explain.
Thank you. I believe the anomalies existed in our dimension because they were portals of some kind into this one. What we were seeing back home may have been coming from here. It therefore stands to reason that if we're in the dimension where they come from, then if we go to Duna, we can get to it. And with it, we might be able to get home again.
Alright, we're alone here. We have nothing. We have no space program, but we have this base, and we have our brains. And if we work together, then we can do this. We'll be starting basically from scratch, so by the end of today, I want some initial prototypes for a new communication system that we can start deploying right away. Settle in, folks. We're gonna be here for a while, but we will get home.
Greetings, Kerbonauts. This is Kerbal Space Program. I'm Bob Fitch, and this is Episode 1 of Project Odyssey. Odyssey, of course, named after our dimension's great novel, The Odyssey, written by Homer. Homer's Odyssey was all about a group trying to get home, and that's what this is. Our Kerbals are now stuck in an alternate dimension, and they want to go home. But as you just heard them say, they don't have anything. There are no other Kerbals around. The base is all they have available to them. So what are they going to do? They're going to have to start their entire space project from scratch. We need to put up everything that you could possibly want to make it to Duna and back again, to collect that artifact, whatever it might be, whatever they discovered when they went to Minmus back in their own world. They need to go there and get it and bring it back. So we're going to have to build up everything from the beginning. And when I say everything from the beginning, I'm not kidding. You might be saying, oh, does that mean this is a career mode where he's going to advance his technology? Well, not exactly. It's similar to career mode, where I am going to build up my technology from the ground up, but I'm going to do it myself by hand. I'm not actually going to rely on the science of the game. It's just more complicated to do it that way. You'll understand when I explain a little bit more. I have a brand new installation of the game, and guess how many parts are in it? 0. There's nothing in it. Everything that is going to go into this project, I'm going to make myself from scratch by pulling the parts in from other mods and building up this installation one part at a time. And while I do it, I am also going to rebalance all the parts in order to make them more appropriate with each other. Because a lot of the times when you get these mods and you bring the parts in, they're all balanced well within themselves, and they might be balanced with stock. maybe not in some cases, but they aren't necessarily all balanced with each other, and there's just so many different redundant parts and everything, and you don't really need them all. So we're going to build everything from the ground up by taking one part in at a time, choose something that we need to launch. Like at the very beginning here, we know we're going to need to get our remote tech network put up, so we're going to put out our first satellites, but maybe even before we can do that, we have to build a launcher for that system. So we're going to start building a brand new KLS Kerbal Launch Systems version 2, and it's going to have whole new rockets in it. Now, one of the things that I'm doing in order to make this entire process possible is I'm actually also writing an application in C# that will create the installation for me. It's hard-coded at this point, so before you ask, no, it's not a mod I'm working on that I'm going to be able to publicly release. It's just a bunch of hard-coded C# code that does exactly what I need it to do. I'll include some screenshots now and then in my episodes, but I'm not going to be able to constantly maintain this for everybody to be able to download, because that's just going to make it too much work to do that and be making the episodes at the same time. So for starters, one of the things that I do anytime I'm making a rocket is I go through a particular checklist that I've made for myself to look at all the different things on the checklist that I'm going to need on that rocket and make sure that I have every one of those things. And if we're going to start a new launcher system, we're going to have to begin by looking at that list and making sure that we have one of everything that's on there so that we can actually put up our initial remote tech satellites. And when it comes to balance, I'm going to be using some spreadsheets to figure out what everything needs to be. I've already started working on that. We're going to look at the balance of things like CPUs and pods, solar panels, batteries, communications, engines, boosters, fuel, decouplers, wheels, lights, monopropellant RCS engines, you name it, all of that might get rebalanced as I see fit. After all, one of the things I do for my company is game balance. I may be a technical director, programmer, working on just the source code usually, but one of the other things that I'm pretty good at, if I say so myself, is working with spreadsheets and figuring out game balance and making sure it's all still fair but fun. I want to be able to pull parts from any mod that I might be able to get my hands on, but I can't put all the mods into one installation using a 32-bit app like here I have on Windows. So therefore I've had to create multiple installations that have different mods in each one, and I load up all of them, and then I take a look at all the parts that I might choose from. I pick out the one that's the most interesting to me, and then that's the one that I'm going to put into my C# application that will be used to create the new install where Project Odyssey is going to be filmed. So where do we begin when we have nothing in our installation, no parts whatsoever, and nothing out in the universe? If I'm going to be using remote tech, then I'm going to have to start with a remote tech satellite, something that'll sit above Kerbal right about here out at geostationary orbit, so that everything I launch will be able to communicate with it. And if it stays in a geosynchronous orbit directly above mission control, then I know that I'll always have a very large area in which I can launch, where I won't lose contact with anything that might be staying at a lower altitude. For no particular reason other than I thought it would be fun, I selected solar panels as the first thing that I wanted to try to rebalance. So I took the picture in my mind of the TDRS satellite I wanted to make, and I looked through all of my mods for different solar panel options, and I selected this one right here. These come from the Near Future pack, the mod, whatever you want to call it, and they just kind of looked a lot like real TDRS satellite solar panels to me, so that's why I picked them. But it was not before I went through a whole bunch of other choices, all these other different mods here from the AIES, we've got them from Cosmos, we've got them from regular stock, all kinds of solar panels. Now, of course, what solar panels do is generate electrical power, so I also have to come up with some sort of a balance rule for solar power, batteries, power consumption just in general. And so what I did was I decided that I'd go with about 250 watts per square meter, which is more than what it should be in real life, but this is Kerbal, so things are scaled a little differently anyway, and I think that's appropriate for this world. And then we have to think about electrical power and what that means, because in the game we only have E, electrical, energy, whatever, electric charge. And so I decided on 1 watt in real life being equated to 0.01 E per second in KSP. And all of my things that generate power, that consume power, will all be based on that and somewhat comparable to things in real life that use power. Also, since this is a brand new installation, all of my things aren't set up like all of my settings in the main KSP windows, my toolbars, my alternate resource panel that needs to be modified. All these different things. We got deadly reentry settings, Ferrum aerospace settings, any kind of mech-jeb windows, my distant objects mod, remote tech, simple part organizer config file, Kerbal alarm clock setup. So lots of different things that still need to be configured, and I have to go through and do all of those as well. And this brings us back into the VAB finally, with a bunch of stuff already done now, with all those spreadsheets done. Well, not all of the spreadsheets done, but with the spreadsheets that are now on their way to being in pretty good condition, I'm ready to actually start making my TDRS C satellite. TDRS A and B were, of course, in the Project Gateway. Project Odyssey is going to use TDRS C here. Now, one of the things that I want to do is I've created some parts here. You can see I have this long-range dish SPU. SPU is for remote tech, of course. And I have a short-range dish SPU and attitude control system. I want to have one computer control for each different thing that might need control. So what that means is if I'm going to put 4 dishes on a satellite, which I want to do for my TDRS satellite, then I'm going to take 4 of these long-range dish control units here, one for each of my dishes. And then you can see over here that each one uses a certain amount of power as well. So I'm going to have to store enough battery and enough solar on there to power all of these different signal processing units that will handle those 4 dishes. But that's not all. I'm also going to have an antenna on it. I called this one short-range dish SPU, but it's also going to be able to power a short-range antenna, short being 5 million meters in this case. And then I have this last one that's just a generic CPU that I'm going to imagine is controlling the attitude and control of that satellite. So we have 6 different control units on here that are all going to need solar and all need battery. You can see that I have put some electric charge on each of these that will allow it 15 minutes worth of charge at that rate. So I'll need a lot more battery. Okay, so why don't we go take a look at my battery? The one that I want to use is this one here. I didn't actually change the name of it, but I did change the amount of electrical power that's in it. You can see 3200. I figure at the rate that this particular satellite is going to end up using up its charge, that should give me enough time to actually go through the dark side of communications. The dark side up at a geostationary orbit is 1200 seconds. This battery should provide enough to go through 1500 seconds. Now, of course, I want to give it a little bit more of a sleeker look, so I was going to put some end caps on the top and bottom here, and then put that battery back on there. Oh no, wait, we need to have a gyroscope, right? So we go over to here, and I have imported one gyroscope that has way less reaction wheel than the normal piece of this size. I think this is from the KSPX maybe. So we can put that one right in there, attach the battery to that, then go back through the tabs here and see what we still might be missing. I'm going to eventually want to put this mono tank. This is formerly a xenon tank, but I'm not really that into xenon usually because those are so inefficient, those xenon propulsion systems of any kind there, ion drives. So I just tend to not use them, but I do like the look of that tank, so I thought it might make a cool tank to put monopropellant on, so I repurposed it for mono instead. Moving our way up, I'm probably going to want a a little strut on there that I can start connecting some of my antenna stuff here to. So we'd put one of those on there and maybe a couple of these on the sides here. I'm going to go a little quicker because I've already built this once and I just want to show how I sort of went about doing it and why I did it. I put some servos on here so that I can keep everything compact, and then just put these struts on there and build those up in this direction. Then put some communications dishes on there. That'll give us the 4 different communications dishes. 2 of the 2 range here, these are 50 megameter. That will allow me to communicate with Minmus as well as one other target. We have this dish, which is 20 megameters, and these are rebalanced, of course, for what I've done. These are not the original part distances. In fact, I don't think this one even originally has it. It comes from AIES, and they don't even have dish range on that thing. But I've redone it to have 20 megameters. And then finally, I like this antenna. I like the way that it looks when it extends out like this right here. I like the way that looks, so I've used that one for my 5 megameter instead of the Communitron that comes with stock. If I don't want to spend the power of 0.07 per second on that one, this one's only 0.03 but only goes 1 megameter, but that should be good later in the series when I need something for lower altitudes or around moons or something like that. We'll also be putting on here those solar panels that I showed that'll sort of go on the side like that. And we have some cooling units that I took out of the near future pack but repurposed them so that they would work with the interstellar mod, which I'm using for waste heat. And of course we have more lights all up in here, which I'll be putting on the side of it. I redid all the masses of everything so that when I go in and I look at my KW rocketry fairings, they actually show up in a nice sorted order now. You can see I have them going from the smaller 1.25 to the expanded, then the 2.5 normal and expanded, and then 3.75 normal and expanded. So they're nice and oriented here. So as you can see, these are the only parts that are in my installation now because I've copied them in one by one. And that one right there, you'll get to see that in a second. But that's my first welded part of the new series. And the second welded part is the orange one right there. Not everything that is customized was welded. For example, this engine right here is completely different. It's a scaled down version of a KW engine, but I have repurposed it so that it'll function in space. Notice it has such a low ISP of 103 at sea level, but 411 out in space. And the reason why that one is more than even the other KW engine that is 400, it's because my lower altitude ones down for sea level are a little bit weaker than the normal. If you want to take a look over here, whoops. That's not actually right. Those were inverted. Uh-oh. And that meant when I flipped it back the other way and put the proper ISP down at the surface, the whole rocket became too powerful. So I had to scale down the original engine. Now this one I had just a moment ago said it was 411. Well, now it's down to 396. And I also lowered this ground ISP even more because it occurred to me if I'm changing this anyway, then I probably want to make it very, very clear that this is an orbital engine and definitely not for use in lower atmosphere. And now this one is balanced properly, so our engine here will be used for our lower core stage. If I need to go into higher orbits, we will just use one of these boosters. This comes from KW. It has similar ISP, but it has different thrust and different fuel. I standardized on a certain amount of solid rocket fuel per cubic meter, and based on the size of this one, it needed to have less than what originally came in the KW one. What I'll do with my rockets is over time I'll have subassemblies over here that'll be component based, not like in Project Gateway where I had all the different pre-assembled rockets, but instead I will have like the core stage will be one thing and the Minotaur will be one thing, and so I'll put them together whenever I'm making a rocket. And that way I can have fewer things over here rather than a whole bunch of pre-assembled ones. And now that we're all done looking at the different solar panel options, we can move on to some other part. So far, we've kind of taken a look at what I'm going to use for control and command. We've looked a little bit at our engines. We've now seen a little bit about the battery and the solar panel. So what else do we really need? So if one of the first things we're going to need to do is put up some communications satellites, then we need some communications dishes. Now, the way that I think they should be balanced is instead of having them just an arbitrary set of different distances, like comes with some of the add-ons and mods, we should have them be based on distances that are actually in the game, like needing to lift off, being in low orbit or high orbit, trying to go to a close moon or a far moon, a close planet, a far planet, or just deep space. So that's the only dishes and antenna that I think we need to have. I figure that we could do for the first three, the liftoff, low orbit, and high orbit, we can do 3 different antenna, and then 5 dishes for things like going to close moon, close planet, far planet, and deep space. 100 kilometers should be enough to get us out of the atmosphere to deploy a better antenna that might have been blown off had we activated it down in the atmosphere. 1 megameter should be good enough for low orbit because that'll cover pretty much horizon to horizon for a 500 kilometer altitude space station or satellite or something like that. And high orbit might be considered like geosynchronous orbit where we could do the 5 megameter antenna. Once you go out to moon, you're going to want a 20 megameter. Min-miss is probably about a 50 megameter. And to go to the closer planets, we'll want a 50 gigameter dish, the farther planets a 200 gigameter dish, and deep space, maybe we'll go with 500 gigameter. So to start off, we need to be looking at things here that we would want to pick for our low orbit. Now, of course, the normal one is a 500 kilometer antenna like you see right here. This dipole is typically what we use, but I have found in my experience that this is a bit cumbersome to try to get into certain places and just occasionally really ugly to look on the side of your craft. Things like these ones here that you would normally use, the communitrons, they are also a bit awkward and they stick out and stuff, and they're just sometimes really not as much fun to play around with as maybe these more compact ones, such as the one that comes from AIES. Notice how when that activates, it goes way out. It looks really cool. It looks cooler than these in my opinion, and it's more compact when it's not extended. Perhaps that one would make a good 5 megameter, but we still need something for the 1 megameter, and I think this one here looks a little bit low tech. Also is compact but extends out an antenna, so it's got a little animation and that's kind of cool, and I think that could make a good 1 megameter. Now we need communications dishes, and we need 5 of them. And I think that to make it obvious that some are better than others, we should work on getting them to be different sizes relative to each other so that it's really obvious that this one is bigger than that one, and so therefore this one transmits further than that one or whatever. So if we look over here, we can see the stock ones and the remote tech ones. If we activate this one, this is the biggest one that remote tech provides, so I figure that should be our deep space antenna, the 500 gigameter one. There's also some medium-sized ones here in remote tech, but if we look over in the AIES section, we can see we have these here that are maybe a little bit bigger. So it seems like maybe we could take, say, that one there for the next size down from the largest. We still need 3 more, however. We need the close moon, far moon, and then the close planet. Dishes that animate are always cool, so we could go with the stock one here that extends out. It's got a pretty decent size to it and packs up pretty small. But for really close range, we're probably going to want to go with something even smaller, so like a close moon thing, say moon itself. Perhaps we could go with this one here, so the 20 megameter could be that little itty bitty one right there. Then we have our 50 megameter, which maybe could be this stock one. And then we get down to our 20 megameter, which probably is the coolest one. I think might be this one here. It's pretty small and it has the cooler extending animation relative to some of the others. Like you can see these others extending their animations here like this. And these just don't look as much like dishes to me. They're maybe a little more realistic, but I like the look of these things with the stuff here in the middle that just makes them look more like dishes. This one's okay, I suppose, but we need something to be kind of small for this last one, and I think this one works pretty good for that. But to start off my remote tech geosynchronous orbit satellites for communications, I think what we're going to want is just an antenna that allows it to communicate at the longer range. So we're going to go with the one that's over here. This one will get us our 5 megameter, the 5 megameter distance. We're going to need to communicate with the other TDRS satellite in orbit. So we need the one that goes 20, and that will be this one over here. We need 2 of those not 2 of those. We need 1 of those to communicate with the other TDRS satellite, and then we need one that's going to go to Minmus and one that's going to go to Moon. So we can put 2 of these on there to deal with Moon, but we're going to need one of the stock ones over here to be able to communicate with Minmus. Outside of that, we don't really need any other dishes yet, so I'm not going to worry about trying to get them into my installation. We'll worry about that when we actually need to upgrade to that technology level. Having run the program and copying in the 5 parts that we just selected, it's now time to check and see if the stats are actually matching up correctly. I have added 1 CPU module in here that I can use just so that I can attach things to it if I want to and put it out on the pad to take a look at it. So I'm looking at the antenna ranges to see whether they seem to have picked up the ranges I want. We have the 1, we have 5. I also set the energy requirement of 25 per second, and I'll get to that in a bit why that's so high. This one is 1. We got the 100 kilometer 0.01. It looks like everything's working out, although I do still need, apparently, I forgot to check the mass values and the max temperatures. Those max temperatures, some of those are too big. But other than that, everything looks good to go. We just need to make sure that these can actually communicate if we were to put them out on the pad. All right, let's give them a try. Everything's looking good to me. All 5 are out there and they have the appropriate ranges and power consumption, so I think we are good to go. Well, I think that about does it for one episode of Project Odyssey. What I'll do is I'll leave you here taking a look at some of my early failures while I'm stress testing these parts. That right there is a stage that's going to be the second stage, the orbital stage, so obviously it is not actually trying to get into orbit. This is just me testing things out. That I don't even remember. Maybe I was doing a drop test. I think actually I was trying to test the engine's power levels there or something. But anyway, so this will in the next episode get us in where we'll start looking at this rocket that I'm giving you a glimpse of now, the one that I've been working on for the very first launch. We had the same radiator problem that I was having back in Project Gateway. I finally figured out what was going on with that. There is some sort of animation in the part that comes with Interstellar that if you try to substitute in a particular type of radiator in one that doesn't have the right animation, then the whole thing just dies like you're seeing right here. But there are 2 types of interstellar radiator, and one of them has the problem and the other one doesn't. So of course I will just switch over and use the type that doesn't seem to have the problem. Anyway, like I said, this is the end of this one. We'll try to get one of these about once a week right now, maybe every Monday initially. We'll see how it's going. It depends on how fast I can get them made because I'm trying to build the installation at the same time that I'm trying to get this whole thing going, right? That's why I'm sort of trying to make the claim that this is a bit like a career mode because they're starting off without the 2.5 or bigger rockets. They're starting off with these little ones right here with nothing in the game whatsoever, and all of the stuff that they're going to have is going to get made as it's needed. So that's sort of like a career. It's just my version of career. So yeah, next time we will get more into who made it through the gateway, what their jobs are going to be, what they're going to try to do now, what they're going to build, how they're going to build it, what I have to do to get the game balanced. I might be able to fit in a little bit more story mode to develop the background of what's going on with the Kerbals. I will go back and show you a bit more about how we got this rocket that I'm demonstrating just a little bit here, showing all the fails, what it took to get this thing built. It's almost done now. I'm probably going to be launching it and recording the next piece right after I finish this. And then ultimately, we will go on an epic journey to get them to Duna to investigate anomalies there and eventually find their way home, but it's going to be so much more than that. I think you may end up finding this to be one of the most impressive interplanetary Duna trips you've ever seen. And you'll see what I mean if you stay tuned to the entire season. Until next time, I will see you later, Kerbonauts.